want to understand the intent and spirit of the American founding, there may be no better person to listen to than General George Washington. Think about the extraordinary vantage point that he had. Washington was present at virtually every defining stage of the American experiment. He was in Philadelphia when the Continental Congress called the colonies to prayer. He was there in Carpenter's Hall when the Reverend Jacob Duché offered that famous prayer before the delegates. Then Washington was chosen to command the Continental Army, and for 8 long years, he led that bloody struggle for American independence. When the war was over, the nation needed a constitution. So Washington was there again, this time presiding over the Constitutional Convention. And when the new government needed its very first president, Washington was the person they turned to one more time. He served 2 terms, and then instead of clinging to power, he voluntarily walked away. But before he left public life, Washington gave the American people something incredibly important, a final warning and a final blessing. And listen carefully to the words he chose. Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. And let us caution, indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Can it be that providence has not connected permanently the joy or felicity of a nation with its virtue? Think about that. Think about what Washington is saying. First, religion and morality are indispensable. When Washington used the word religion, he really meant Christianity. There was no other religion in America at the time. The word religion meant all of the denominations of Christianity. And he said Christianity and morality were indispensable, not helpful, not optional, not merely beneficial, but indispensable. That means you cannot remove them and expect the same result. But Washington takes the argument one step further. Be very careful believing that you can remove religion and somehow keep morality. And finally, he connects that happiness with the flourishing of the nation, what he calls permanent felicity, to its virtue. So Washington gives us a progression: religion, morality, virtue, national flourishing. Remove an indispensable support, and eventually you jeopardize what that support was holding up. I was at IHOP, International House of Pancakes, recently having breakfast with a friend. And it got me thinking about pancakes. Obviously, I'm eating some pancakes. And I thought of the list of the ingredients of pancakes. You got flour, buttermilk, eggs, butter, sugar, baking powder, soda, and salt. Now, you can leave out some of those ingredients and still end up with something resembling a pancake. But if you leave out flour, you've got a problem. Leave out sugar, won't taste as good. Leave out salt, you'll notice it. But what happens if you leave out flour? You don't have a pancake anymore. You've got a bowl of wet goo. Why? Because flour isn't merely another ingredient in the recipe. It's an indispensable ingredient to what you're trying to make. And think about that. Essentially, that's what Washington was saying about America to America. Religion and morality weren't merely decorative additions to the American experiment. Washington called them indispensable supports of political prosperity. And then he specifically warned future generations, don't assume you can remove the Christian religion and somehow keep the morality. That's the mistake we are tempted to make today. That's the mistake we have pretty much committed today. We want liberty without the worldview that gave liberty its meaning. We want the rights without the responsibilities that come with it. We want the virtue without the moral foundation. We want morality without religion. We want the pancake without flour. But Washington's warning is that eventually the recipe doesn't work anymore. If the Christian worldview and the moral framework that profoundly shaped the American founding are removed from public life and from our understanding of liberty, virtue, rights, responsibility, and self-government, we should no longer be surprised when the nation that emerges looks very different from the one the founders intended. So the question for this generation isn't simply how do we preserve America? The deeper question is, what were the indispensable ingredients that made America a self-governing nation possible in the first place? Washington gave his answer: religion, morality, virtue. And his warning across the generations is remarkably simple. Don't remove indispensable ingredients and expect to keep the same results. You can no more expect to preserve the founder's vision for America while dispensing of what Washington called its indispensable supports. Can't get rid of those and expect to make pancakes without flour.